I'm Shelley Taylor, and I'm here with Donnel Nunes. We're just waiting for everyone to file in from the waiting room. So, as we do this, we'll just cover a few housekeeping items. Once again, I'm Shelley Taylor. I am the executive director of the nonprofit Aspen Family Business Group. Here with me today is Donnel Nunes. He is our director of innovation. We're very excited about this webinar today. I know we all hear about AI all the time, and Danelle has been doing a lot of thinking and work on integrating AI into family businesses and what are the best ways to do it and what works well for families and how to make sure it aligns with the family's values and vision as well. Just a few housekeeping items. As I said, we are using the Q&A feature today, so a little bit different than the chat, and we do that just for people's anonymity. In case you want to remain anonymous in the Q&A, you are able to do that. We're encouraging use of the Q&A today. We will be asking you some questions. We definitely want to engage with you and want you to engage with us. So as much as we can make this interactive, that is our aim today. And this is being recorded also. We record all of our webinars so we can save them on both our website and our YouTube channel for future viewing. And with that, we're going to get started. I'm going to ask Adelaide. She's going to start our slideshow, and I'm going to pass it along to Danelle. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah, welcome everyone. And one of the posts that we put out on LinkedIn, the part of the, program description was that this wasn't going to be another talk about AI tools. And when Shelley and I were talking about getting this particular program together for you, one of the things that was an aspiration was to make it something that addresses this current technology but is not limited to it. So I told Shelley, I said, if we could craft something that could be watched 10, 15 years from now and still be relevant, that would be the aim. With that in mind, we've put together a program for you today that really digs into the perspective of how you approach your usage of technology. And in the talk today, we're in the context of AI.
Great.
And if we could go to that next slide.
So here's a chance for everyone to start thinking right off the bat, and please use the Q&A to answer one of these two questions. There's a lot on here, so I'll just summarize. Really, we're talking about if you think about ways that AI can positively impact your business, what can you do see as the possibilities for you in AI with AI in your business? That's one, and the other question relates to really how you see AI influencing and having an effect on you in your life and on those around you. So one or both of those, and please spend some time and put that in the Q&A because we would love for everyone to be engaged and seeing what other people are thinking about as well. So we'll give you a minute to type in those answers, please. And as you think about that, we can advance to the next slide, but I'd love to have everybody continue to think and type in your answers. And there might be long answers. It might take you a while to type them in, but please add your questions and your thoughts. So Danelle, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah. So a number of years ago, it was around 2005, 6, 7. I was working as a behavioral therapist with teens and their families a bit. And at the time, the technology that seemed to be accelerating really quickly were a lot of these tools like Poll Everywhere, where it was opportunities to integrate feedback from your audience. And for those who were paying attention to those particular technologies, it was, there was a flood of different tools that came out. And there was also a lot of other things going on at that time in terms of, what seemed like a really rapid pace of technology. And I found that there was almost like in me this compulsion to like, how do I keep up with this? How do I learn every new tool that's coming out? At one point, I realized that the key was not trying to learn every tool, but to be clear about how and why I was using any particular tool. And in effect, sort of reducing the noise by focusing on what are, first principles. And a first principle is, it's a place that you start from. And in this case, it's about we don't adopt well from urgency, we adopt well from clarity. And if we go to the next slide, this quote here, people feel overwhelmed by too much change in too short of a time, leading to paralysis or reactive decisions. This is from a book called Future Shock. And Shelley's familiar with this one as well. And the thing that I love about Future Shock is it was written in 1970. And if you go through it and read it now, it reads as if it was written today. And basically, one of the things that Alvin Toffler, the author, noted was that too much change in too short of a time can trigger us into a sort of fight or flight type of response. And when we think about that from a psychological perspective, fight or flight effectively puts us into a place where we start to become very black and white in our thinking. We got a lot of like either or perspectives on the world around us, and it robs us of our creativity. And so there's tricks to get out of that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But foundational to how I like people to think about, the use of technology, AI, is to be asking yourself, am I using this in a way that is expanding my capacity or it's building dependence? Next slide. And so, in order to kind of make sure that you are thinking about ways to be on the side of the continuum where it's expansion, we want to be thinking about ways that we are using this in a principled manner. And you can go into the next one.
I just want to jump in quickly. Danelle, yeah, I really like that because also, just going back to the Alvin Toffler quote, the too many things all at once, creates the freeze, right? I don't know what to do, or the reaction. It's like I have to choose something, right? And so it's
Yes.
just jumping, and that's where we would lose those guiding principles and the just having something at the core which guides your decisions instead of I have to choose something and I have to do it now. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And when you get into that place of where you're approaching things from a principled manner, it's like you're actually finding ways to be more effective in how you both lead yourself and how you lead others. And this slide right here, technology readiness cycle for family business, um, this is sort of the culmination of some ways that I've been thinking about how I personally interact with AI and ways that I encourage clients and other people who I might be educating about the use of AI to be thinking about it. And the key here is to have something that provides you with a foundational principle for how you approach it. So when all that noise, I mean, right now, you could arguably be introduced to 10 new AI tools a day. And, what I believe is that the skillful use of technology is not defined by how many of those tools you know how to use, but how well you're using the ones that matter the most for what you're trying to accomplish. And so if we start with something that gives us a grounding place to return to when we're thinking about, how we want AI to be a part of our lives or business, it helps us to slow down and to focus on places where we have a lot of influence. And so if we go to the next slide, this is a model that I use when I'm working with clients to help them understand a sort of foundational way of pulling back from the latest tool and thinking about the starting point. And the starting point for how you enter into deciding which tools and things that you're going to use, it all begins with energy. And at a recent retreat, we were meeting for our annual planning session in Arizona. We were talking about the critical nature of energy and how it, if we have this circular model um, on its own, there has to be something that gets it going. And that thing is a willingness to learn and grow. It's staying curious. It's wanting to be, engaged and interested in being someone who determines their future related to this, rather than reliant. Um,
Yeah,
yes.
well, I love how this model, the energy creation, has as at its core the willingness to learn and grow. Because another model that we created that we'll be actually highlighting in a future webinar this year is the what we call the balanced family scorecard. And that's sort of basic to family growth and development, the family system growth and development in the family business environment or any really, but to have that willingness to learn and grow is at the foundation of all of the other activities that a family can do together. You have that willingness part is really critical there. Sort of called, buy-in, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah, it's really something that it makes the difference as to whether or not it happens, right?
Yeah.
And, a real quick pass through on this, it's like we start with that willingness to learn and grow, the curiosity, and then consistent with, for those of you who have done some work with advisors or been exposed a little bit to, you know, what this family business work is all about, whether you're talking about technology or the general functioning of the family and the business, everything starts with those values. And they lay the foundation for building a shared vision. And from there, we move into this item here, which is family awareness, which is a reflects sort of a system awareness, like what we know about ourselves as a family. And it goes into, okay, well, what do we have to do at the adaptability side of things to steer our future, which is agency? And how do we explore what it is that we're hoping to accomplish through action? And if we go into the next slide, we'll start talking a little bit more about these individual items. And maybe we'll take a quick look at the Q&A.
And we have some great ways that people envision, or maybe actually in practice already, ways that AI can help them or be helping them. And Maya Kogan, thank you, Maya, for your response there as well. She's talking about how, the individual's uniqueness and what we bring to it becomes even more important maybe when we're going to rely on technology for some aspects, the human aspects, sort of get amplified. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. And there's also a comment in here about making faster decisions and being able to integrate data more strategically. All good points. And what I'm seeing in this and or hearing in this is that, thoughts about like intentionality about how you come to these tools. And as we go through each of these sections, there was another part of our discussion during our annual planning retreat where we were thinking about sort of the logic nature of how we approach things in family business, and also the emotional and interpersonal considerations that we have to make relative to decisions that we're working on in order to have a balanced perspective. And in this presentation, I'm defining the logic as sort of the IQ side of things and the interpersonal and emotional as the EQ. And when it comes to values related to technology, we need to be thinking about from the IQ perspective, what are the technologies we want to use and how are we using measurable criteria to make sure that they align with these core values? And that measurable criteria part is part of having that, objective way of thinking about the alignment of the technologies that we're using relative to our business or to our family governance. And then thinking about from the emotional perspective, how do we use the technologies in ways that ensure that the emotional needs of our family, employees, and customers are honored. And I'll give you an example here is when you're implementing things like AI into your business, an emotional need that needs to be considered is what it can suggest, given the current world that we're in, um, to be bringing these technologies into the workplace. So, what do you want to convey to your employees? Do you want to say that we are all about, the work product outcome? And so you just say, here are the things that I need you to use to be more efficient. Or do you want to make sure that you are also conveying to employees that, hey, we're not looking to replace you here. We're looking to make sure that we're leveraging you and what you contribute in the same way that we're trying to do it by integrating these tools. So, a practical strategy is when you're teaching AI into the organization is start by teaching employees how to use it personally if they haven't already. Shelley, you look like you had
Yeah.
something
Yes,
you're going
I
to
was
add.
going to say just back to the and you started moving in a different direction, so I don't want to detract from that, but thinking about sort of the emotional approach and the logical approach to all of these aspects, and I feel we could spend an hour on each of these slides that you have coming up because it's so rich in content. And people, those of us who are in family businesses or working in family businesses, we're well aware that there's often the intellectual, the knowledge, the IQ side of things really in work needing to work together with the emotional side of things and the relational side of things. So bringing that perspective to evaluating and implementing new products, new ways of doing things is a really interesting approach, and I like that and valued because of what we're dealing with all the time, family businesses.
Yeah, and as we go through these next couple of slides, it's pointing us in the direction of coming up with a plan for technology use in your own family system. And so each of these things, as we go through them, I encourage you to consider what these questions are asking as prompts to how you might draft the different sections of that plan.
And we have a great example that somebody put in the Q&A about customized AI bot capturing the founders' perspectives on many aspects of the business, and those are available. And I don't know if this is already in use, if the if our anonymous attendee can tell us a little bit more if this is being received well or if it's still in its beta stage. But that's a fascinating thing. And I know, Danelle, you've actually been using AI for something not exactly like that, but a similar approach in the mentoring, which maybe we'll talk about in our next mentoring webinar. Don't want to get us off track.
Yeah, it's
But
okay. And I think that this is going to be an increasingly more common use of AI tools. And when we think about, those of you that are in multi-generational families, um, who have historically looked for ways to capture knowledge and capture history, this particular technology offers a fantastic opportunity to do that in a way that is almost, hard to currently define where that's the
yeah.
potential of that. But again, it's like if a value of your family is capturing, founders' perspectives, and obviously there is a business value to that, but if there's also a value of capturing the family history and perpetuating family legacy, that is a wonderful expression of a value like that.
We have a URL there in the Q&A for those of you who are interested in checking that out. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and if we go to the next slide, it's like that particular item that you shared there is a manifestation of this is your vision and thinking about like what goals or milestones will help you know that AI or any technology is helping you achieve your long-term vision. With these tools, I think what makes it so different than perhaps 20 years ago when I was playing around with, these anonymous feedback systems is anonymous feedback systems were sort of a tool that could be used for isolated application. And with the way that technology has evolved at this point, it's my belief that if you aren't integrating some of these AI tools that are coming out and thinking about how they get used to support the work that you're doing, you're missing out on a tremendous opportunity for, at the very least, adding efficiencies. And so when you look at what your vision for the future is for the family and the business, it's important to also now consider what role is technology going to play in that? Um, and how do you make sure that that technology from the EQ side is supporting the concerns of each generation and stakeholders? And, with that, there can be differing levels between individuals and generations in the family in terms of comfort with having technology brought into play, um, or seeing the potential of it or believing that it's critical. And so, with the shared vision, you work on defining the parameters of what everyone agrees upon in terms of the role that technology is playing in your business. Shelley, I'm curious, like, you're in a family business and you've been working with family businesses for a very long time. Have you seen in the drafting of visions, a specific section for technology prior to recent years?
No, only guidelines for younger family member, use of social media, and
Right.
that's more of like a cautionary tale. But
Hmm.
it's not how to capitalize on efficiencies or other things. But yeah, I mean, back to the first one on the values too. I think that there are ways really important to have that alignment because you could see, we're going to use tools that are hallucinating or use tools that are making fake imagery, right? Is that depending on your business, maybe that is appropriate, but I think a lot of the sort of the manufacturing or the old school businesses probably don't want that representing what they're doing, depending on what the goal is. But yeah, I think that's a really important point that's definitely going to have to be worked in, not as as both a cautionary tale and as opportunity. I think what technology could do for us and what to watch out for.
Yeah, there's a colleague of mine. He is a software engineer, and he actually, through his encouragement, I started using ChatGPT back in March of 2023. And 15 minutes of working with him, he helped me to take a project that would have been a 4 or 5 day writing project and get it 80% of where I needed it to be within, 30 minutes. And then I went back in and refined it. And one of the ways that he was describing this technology compared to others was that, you know, prior to the release of these kinds of tools, you might have some kind of technology that helps you that's very context specific. For me, way back when, it was the anonymous feedback systems that I was using in group therapy sessions. Okay. It was very context specific. And with AI and these kinds of technologies, what he said to me is he said, there will come a day where this will be like plastic. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He said, look around you. How much of, our world around us and the things that we use are now made of plastic and we don't even give it a second thought. And when plastic was first introduced, people were probably like, wow, check this out. But his analogy for, AI was that, this is a type of technology that's going to be integrated into, virtually, our entire world, in lots of different ways. And so, again, back to this, we're talking about how you be intentional and purposeful in the way you're approaching it. So, if we go to the next slide, in the work that I've done over the years with leadership development in particular, there's different models that we think about, and almost all of them start with two things. They start with self-awareness and self-management. And that from that you build things like, you know, relational capacity, you build decision making capacity, collaborative capacity, and all these kinds of things. And in this particular model here, what we're talking about is the family's self awareness. And so, thinking about this logically, what patterns in our decision making have led to success or setbacks with past technologies? There's a lot to be learned by digging into that question and thinking about it emotionally. How do our emotions like fear of change or excitement shape how we approach new technologies? Guaranteed, in every family out there, you've got the folks that are, hey, this is new and I want to jump on it. They're the early adopters. And you have the folks on the other end of the continuum and everywhere between, but who are more cautious and might have anxiety by something being thrown into the mix. And if we go to things like psychometrics, like personality assessments and things like that, there is benefit to having both of those perspectives. But in the case of this particular question, it's about being clear about using that balance. If you have somebody that's all ahead on what you're doing, full steam ahead, great. But they need to be tempered by the people who are going to say, let's also think about how, the risk and the things like this, the people who sort of pump the brakes a little bit.
And I can see how there might be generational differences on some of these components of the cycle, right? The family awareness and some of the ones you have coming up too, right? And not to be ageist, but often you see older people less likely to embrace change. Obviously, there are exceptions to that always, but the digital natives, the younger people, much more familiar, comfortable, might be much more ready to adopt new technologies or try out new things, even if they're temporary or, just dipping a toe, not necessarily all in.
Yeah, no, I think there is some truth to that about generational, the tendency for younger generations to perhaps be a little more comfortable with technology. And there also, to your point, there are exceptions. I've got like a couple of my clients where the senior generation has embraced this technology more than the younger generation.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I love that I've seen people doing it is, and that's reflective in this family awareness, is I've had, both in clients and also even in my own relatives, where folks who have had historically a difficult time expressing, deep interpersonal things have been using some of the chat tools to help them articulate emotional things they want to share with others. And then part of the deal is that they have to be transparent that they're using that with the people that they share it with, and that they also say, okay, here is you know, this has captured what I wish I could have said on my own. And so again, it's back to this, like, how do the emotions factor into this family? We could go on to the next slide. Adaptability. Uh, Adaptability, I believe, is one of those things that is almost somehow tied to, like, what is the meaning of life? And it's that in our lives, it's arguable that a big part of being a human being is that we constantly face new challenges and new opportunities. With each of them, we have to make a decision. Am I going to accept this? And if I'm going to accept it, how am I going to adapt to continue evolving towards this new reality? And that as long as you sort of continue that cycle of acceptance and adapting, um, you start to move on to what is the next slide, which we'll go there in a second, which is agency. And so with adaptability, what you're doing is you're looking at, like, what are the specific processes you'll use to test technologies before fully committing. Okay. And this is taking a pilot approach. From the emotional perspective, how do we support each other when the fears their fears, disagreements, or uncertainties. So again, supporting others as part of adaptability and using that example once again. A client of mine wanted to have their management team learning about AI tools. And what we decided was the best approach for doing that strategically was to start by teaching them how it could have an impact in their own lives. Because if they could get the buy in there, then they could start to be curious about how they could support making it impact work, and that they could see themselves as collaborators with the owners in how that technology comes into the workplace, hopefully reducing the fear that they were just, contributing towards their own replacement.
Yeah. Danelle, can you talk a little bit more about that when you say encouraging employees or maybe they're even family members to use AI personally first? And, just give an example, maybe what you mean by that for their personal work at work or for doing something at home or, what kind of system or tool are they using?
It could be either. And so if you are, because it's the most familiar tool, if you talk about ChatGPT, so if you can have a group of people, whether it's your management team or whether it's at your next family gathering, um, to use chat gpt, some will be using 10 other tools or moved on from that, but some won't have had the experience yet of really using it in a sophisticated way, and if you can help everybody to identify something in their personal life that they wish they could be doing better or more effectively, you can help coach them on how to write a prompt that again is going back to that thing of expansion. There's another metaphor for this. It's, are you leading the dance when you are working with technology, or is the technology leading the dance? And I would argue there are times where letting the technology lead the dance is worthwhile for sort of mundane things. But you work on teaching the family to say, here's the situation that I want to do better with. Here's what I've tried, what appears to be working, and where are some of my blind spots. That's leading the dance. That's making technology a collaborative partner that expands what a person sees about themselves. And when they start to see that in their own lives, you start to get buy-in, and they start to also understand how to use AI in a more sophisticated manner, which can then you can turn the lens over to the business or more critical issues.
Yeah, thank you. And just one more thing about this slide from my perspective. This to me is so similar to when I've seen businesses implementing new software. So not technically AI, but just technology and a new CRM system or ERP, any of those things which are huge. It's a huge heavy lift. And you see all of these aspects and components when that's happening too. There's fear, there's resistance, there's those who are ready to go right in and those who are slow to adopt and adapt both. And then, in the case of a lot of these software systems that people have implemented and what I've experienced that they've experienced is there's always a real learning period and a growth period and lots of trials and tribulations and then fixes and all that other stuff. But really to me, very relatable to those scenarios. So if anyone's encountered that in their work lives or in their family businesses,
Yeah,
curious.
100%. And I think there's also, even in this, it's like, are there people who are going to drop out of the implementation prematurely because they had a bad experience? It's like figuring that out. And if we
Yep.
go to agency, here it's, from a logical perspective, it's thinking about who makes the final decision on which technologies you adopt, and that you ensure that you have the right expertise. And while the large language models have gotten steadily better and better and better, They still make mistakes that require the right expertise. One of my go-to tools, I have the pro account of ChatGPT, which is $200 a month. And I find that it's grown in sophistication and what it can do tremendously, even in the last couple months. And there are times where my use of it, I am taking 20 minutes to write the prompt that is going to go in, and that may include different kinds of data, different kinds of direction that I want it to take, different frameworks I want it to limit its perspective to. And then when I run the actual prompt, I've had those things take 25 minutes to give me an answer. And and even with that, I go back through it. And one of the most common errors that I find with that tool at that level of use is the error of omission. And so it will make the mistake of not adding in a critical factor associated with the particular problem I'm trying to resolve. Most of it'll be great, but it'll miss that. And so the right expertise remains a critical piece that human beings need to be involved in. And ChatGPT is not that right expertise. It's not it.
Well,
And
and that's a really good point. The critical thinking part, right? There's a lot of data and there's a lot of taking a big thing and narrowing it down, or maybe sometimes in the reverse, but that critical, that some people would call it, right? That human factor. We still can't
right.
rely on the artificial tools for that.
Yeah. And then the EQ part of this, again, it goes back to that, are we using technology as a collaborative partner where we guide the questions with our thoughts rather than relying on it to solve the problem for us? Which takes us to the next part of the model, action research. This is actually from, in business, the model for doing research is a little different than the models that get done for academic research. In business, we can't wait for something to be peer reviewed and all this kind of thing. We got to do it now. And this part of the model is, take something that you've come to at this point in the cycle and run a pilot. Figure out how you're going to measure success. Um, do this in a way that maybe has KPIs attached to it, that has a really objective way that you will know if this was successful, but also include from the emotional and relational side of things. How do we make sure that there's buy-in? So there's sort of like the business output um, that we need to make sure it's addressing, but we also need to be thinking about the people side of it. Are we getting buy-in? Is it, triggering some kinds of fears in family or employees that could undermine you being able to make the right decision after you do the work? And so if we go back to the slide, which is it's the next slide, this one here, this is the way I want to encourage people to think about this particular model. Values, shared vision, and family awareness are the guiding foundation part of this model. Obviously, with the willingness to learn and grow being the energy that feeds into this, the curiosity, the wanting to see what you can do. And those things remain relatively stable. But after you've established those, the adaptability, the agency, and the action become the steps that are dynamic. And each time that you're thinking about implementing something new into the family or business system, those are the steps that you might review the values, shared vision, and family awareness, but you're not recreating those things. It might be refining it or updating it. And the adaptability, agency, and action become the things that are the next sort of pilot exploration. Ollie, do you have any comments or questions on that?
No, I love that. I mean, I think you're right where the values, the shared vision, and the family awareness, those are that work needs to be done, but then it's there. You can review it again, but you need to be adaptable, right? I mean, those next three steps are there's going to be change. There are going to be fits and starts, and just understanding that that's part of the whole process is being able to start over or try something or dip your toe in. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, and it feeds back into the value, shared vision, and family awareness is like
Sure.
you are assessing the outcome of your action research and making sure that it's remained aligned and making adjustments if it's not.
And based on how those first 3 in the cycle are, you're gonna approach things differently as well, right?
Yeah.
So, where's the buy-in? Where's the awareness? Where are we coming from? What are our motivators? They'll affect the rest of the cycle.
Yeah. And if we go to the next slide, this is the call to action. Okay. Is just like I talked about starting out with figuring, with employees or family members, with helping them define personal value before you try and apply things to the broader organizational system. What I would encourage everyone watching this now is to work on your own personal plan for technology use and to go through this cycle. And I'm not talking about something that's 10 pages long. It's like 1 to 2 pages. Build out the sections for each of those steps around the circle in a way that captures the experience of doing this for you at a personal level, which will then position you well to lead how it might get done in the family. Um, and to help you with that, we're going to move into talking about the tools that we've developed through aspenfamilybusinessgroup.org as one potential option. If we go to the next slide. So when we first started thinking about what is the technology, how are we going to use AI in trying to execute our mission to make, you know, information that is normally reserved for people with greater means or things like that. If we wanted to reduce the financial barriers to the information of family business advising, we started thinking about AI being primarily the tool that was, a chatbot that drew on information that was generated from decades of contributors in the Aspen Family Business Group. And where that evolved was to what we recognized was an ecosystem. It's a knowledge ecosystem. And that is an AI chatbot that is also linked to web based technology tools. And we're working on this, you know, personal technology use plan. We're going to talk through these tools a little bit to uh, share some of what's going on with those and propose that this could be a great place to start. And if we could go into the next slide, the first part is Sam. And Sam is our conversational AI coach. And the owl, we've brought the owl into things. We have Leslie Dashew, who many of us think of as our the Athena of our group, the goddess of war and wisdom, but the wisdom part. And Sam is an AI chatbot, and what makes it different from a large language model is that this is a contained model where the information that it's been trained on uh, has been closed off from the outside web. So you're not getting, family business responses that were in Reddit or things like that. And it's trained from the knowledge that has been generated over the decades of the Aspen Family Business Group and is continuing to be trained by what we call our legacy circle, which are people who are seminal in the field who've been donating their work to the nonprofit to help us create a more sophisticated model. There's so much more to this than just this, but these were the things that I really wanted to make sure to convey. Is this is not a LLM generalist, okay? ChatGPT is a generalist. What makes Sam different is it is specifically trained to support people related to family business related topics. And because of how it's designed, um, it is less likely to give you hallucinations relative to that specific body of knowledge than something like ChatGPT might. And It also the execution of this we put here an honest AI. This is an example of technology use being aligned with values. And how is Sam an honest AI? If you go into any other chatbot that I'm aware of and you keep asking questions and you have somehow gone beyond the model's capacity to answer it, it hallucinates. And so what that means is it makes something up. If you do that in SAM, if it cannot reach the confidence levels that we've set to give you an accurate answer, it will tell you that. And what I love about that is that there's honesty here. And it's not going to try and make something up just to kind of conveniently respond to an inquiry. And that was a very deliberate choice made by, you know, the people involved in building SAM to make sure that we were aligned with our values. It's subtle, but I think it's huge.
And working with us. I know we've had a couple trials where we're testing out this multi-turn conversation, and Sam keeps trying to make sure that they understand what question is being asked, and that confidence level, we've played around with it, lowering it and raising it to make sure that we are really being true to what we believe and trying to give the best possible experience to people using it as well.
Yep. And if we could go to the next slide.
And the URL is familybusiness.ai. And you can get there from the aspenfamilybusiness.org. You can get there either way.
Yeah. And and we have the resource base, and this is our platform that has a knowledge base, publications, toolbox, webinars. Shelley, if you want to speak a little bit to all of that.
Well, we have knowledge base just contains a lot of historical items from the Aspen Family Business Group over the years, and we're continuing to create new content there. Publications are anything from books to pamphlets to white papers, and those are items that we keep adding to, and also some of our what we call our legacy circle members that Donnell referred to, leaders in the field who have graciously contributed some of their life's work to us. And the toolbox are actionable items. I mean, we try and give people things that they can take, use right away, reference sheets, one pagers that you can download and use for assessing where you are, or for making charts, or for figuring things out, decision making in your families. Webinars such as this, we got the recordings going. The next step is the written transcripts we'll be adding to the site, and we want everything to be accessible, no matter what you want to learn about and how you like to learn. So we're trying to create a lot there for everybody.
Yeah, and there's something here. This is an acronym on the slide, RAG, and I cannot for the life of me remember what that stands for. I just grabbed onto the acronym. But basically, what that does is if you've ever used an AI tool where it reads PDFs or things like that, it's that. This is what that technology does. And in our system, it enables SAM and our website to kind of benefit from each other. And that technology should be starting to be in place in May 2026. Um, and it basically creates the knowledge ecosystem being sort of one thing that's working together. If we go to the next slide, so how Sam can help you with drafting your plan. It can give you guidance on how you plan to run the meetings, can give you tips on how to keep the process collaborative, recommendations for managing conflict that surfaces, help with troubleshooting issues that come up. It's that and more. You can even ask it, how can you help me to facilitate this more impactfully? And if we go to the next page, and on the site itself, there's a wonderful tool called the Values Unfolding Instrument that you can use to identify your own personal core values. And then you can take that out to the family more broadly or into your organization. There's a terrific webinar from February. Shelley was part of that with shared values and shared vision. And another webinar from June 2025 on values and vision. And all of these can be great ways to start that wheel in motion with the values and vision. And these are the tools to support that. Shelley, would you add anything?
No, I think that's great. Yeah, you'll find other things on shared vision statements and others. So poke around it in the toolbox. We have a search function on the website too, but we try and make all those available.
And then if we go to the next slide, so this is the call to action, okay? Is try using this cycle to create your personal tech readiness plan and practice using SAM and the online, resources that we just talked about to help facilitating you capturing your own plan. And once you've got that in a place that you feel confident about how it was executed, then take that and take it to the family. And you can share with them what you learned. You can share with them, like, how it worked for you and come up with a plan for how you can do it for the family more broadly. And then to the last slide, any questions? We've got a couple minutes left.
If we didn't cover anything, Danella, as you can see, is very well versed in this topic and be happy to provide more guidance and information. Maybe Danelle with a minute or two, as people, if they want to explore on their own, and not to put you on the spot, but sort of that personal exploration. What kind of questions? What kind of things get the where are ways that if people are not familiar with the AI tools, or using them, don't have the experience using them themselves, what kind of queries? I mean, I know that having you don't want to just say, you don't ask for definitions of words. It's not a dictionary and simple things that you can get answers for. It's really for more complex things. Do you have an example of maybe a well crafted prompt and also topic areas where people really can get benefit from using AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a good starting place is to, okay, go into ChatGPT. If you don't already have an account, get a free account. The first thing you do after you get your free account is you go under settings and you go to data sharing and you turn off data sharing. Okay. That's the first thing you do. That makes sure that anything that you're putting in there isn't being shared back with the broader model. But after that, these models, whether it's that or anything else that's out there in that chatbot kind of large language model, they're good at coaching for how to use AI. And so describe yourself, describe your curiosity. You don't want to share anything that is, compromising information on that, whether that's business or personal. But you can talk about your experience with using technology, your comfort level with using technology, your curiosity about how you could write effective prompts. What are some of the common topic areas that people explore using it? Personally, I will use AI I'll have it run a 360 on me, you know, uh, and I've got enough history in it that it does a pretty effective job. I've also used it when I'm coming up with new ideas and ask it to, uh, tell me where I might have some blind spots. It's a wonderful way to get some feedback in a very non threatening way. But generally, I think you can lean into the AI, say, give me 10 steps to writing or 5 steps to writing the most impactful prompts. And that's the best way to get
Right.
some coaching.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, we're rounding out the hour here, and I want to make sure we let everyone go at the top of the hour. Thank you, Danelle, so much for adding this. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And I'm glad that there was some participation in the Q&A, even though this is not the most interactive format. We do our best. I want to remind everyone we have a coffee with Leslie coming up on March 26th. Those are interactive and they are phenomenal. We always get a great turnout and really great dialogue. So please think about that, joining us for that. And then April 14th is our next webinar. It will actually be me and Danelle again, and we'll be talking about mentoring. It'll be our second mentoring webinar. So I hope you can join us then. And thank you all for joining us today. Thanks, Adelaide, for running the controls.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.